Namaste. Welcome to another video in our Top 3 Tips series. I am going to cover the crow pose today, top 3 tips for a successful crow pose that actually takes flight. And if you enjoy this video, please subscribe to our channel. Please comment if you have anything to share, questions that you have. I always love answering questions or hearing your comments and your successes, so please comment as well. All right, so getting started with our first tip for a successful Bakasana crow pose. The first tip is your hand positioning. I see people making this mistake all the time. They have the hands too close to the feet. If your hands are close to your feet, and if you try to shift forward, even when you shift forward quite a bit, you still have this whole ball of the foot to pick off of the floor. And it doesn't slide easy on a yoga mat either. So that's very challenging. If you bring the hands at least about a foot away from your feet, then when you shift forward, you're going to come up onto the tiptoes. And picking a tiptoe up off the mat is a lot easier in comparison. So keeping the distance, that's tip number 1. Distance between hands and feet should be about a foot. Second tip is your positioning of your hips. Some people will try the crow pose with the hips way up high. If you come into the position with the hips way up high, it's almost like you're doing a handstand. So it requires a lot more shoulder strength than if you keep your bum a little bit lower. So I'm teaching the crow pose, I should say, I'm teaching the crow pose in this style where we have the upper arms against the insides of the thighs. The hands are forward, and then we're shifting forward from there. So I'm not teaching the style where we have the elbows up into the arms, which technically for me is a different pose, which is called Bakasana. So we're doing outsides of the upper arms, not knees into the armpits. Okay? So outsides of the upper arms. If you have your hips up high, it's going to be very difficult. If you keep them just a little bit raised, kind of low, and instead of going up with the hips when you go forward, just go directly gliding, keeping the hips at the same height, gliding forward. So thinking about gliding forward, you notice my hips don't change in height much when I go forward, maybe a tiny bit. But we're not doing this. We don't tip with the hips coming up. If you do it that way, you might get off the ground, but it's a lot more challenging. If you're just doing the gliding way, much, much easier. So that's tip number 2. Glide forward rather than lifting the hips when you go forward. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 is to pay attention to your arms. If your arms are not sufficiently bent and offering a shelf for your legs, then it's also going to be very difficult for you to come off of the floor with your feet. So I will show you what happens a lot. So what happens a lot is that students will start to tip the whole body forward, and when they do that, the arms start to go straight as well, right? I'll just change on an angle so you can see it a bit better. The arms will start to straighten, right? It's very difficult to hold this with the arms straight. If you have your elbows bent, your bent elbow creates a shelf for your legs to rest on. So keeping your elbows bent as you lift your hips and you do your glide forward, elbows staying bent, hips staying down, then you'll find it's easier, much easier, to find your balance in your crow pose. So just to review, top 3 tips. First tip is watch the positioning of your hands, leaving a gap of 1 foot between your hands, and your feet. Second tip was watch the positioning of your hips. Rather than lifting up when you go forward, glide forward. And third tip was watching the elbows are bent. So I hope you enjoyed this video on Bakasana, the crow pose, and the top 3 tips for making it successful flight off of the ground. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to our channel, and I look forward to seeing you and your comments in some of our other videos as well. Namaste. Have a great day.